Hello and welcome back to Simon's Rants. I'm Simon and today I'm giving my on second thought on Ace Ventura When Nature Calls. Now in case you don't know, Ace Ventura came out in 1995, it was directed by Steve Oedekerk and is starring Jim Carrey. So in case you don't know the plot of this film, it is a very loose sequel to the first one, the only real connection being the character of Ace Ventura. In fact, it's so loosely connected we don't really even know if it's a sequel or a prequel because we don't know when any of these events actually happen. All we do know is that Ace Ventura went through a traumatic experience, found religion, and then got coaxed back into the game when he's taken to Africa to solve a mystery. The mystery being who stole this albino bat that serves as a religious piece for this tribe. And like many comedies, the focus is put much more onto the comedy than onto the plot, but that is important to point out because it contrasts with the first one a little bit. When I was talking about the first Ace Ventura before, I pointed out that even though the movie is a comedy and the main character is very comedic, the plot is somewhat serious and takes itself somewhat seriously. This movie isn't like that. This movie is much more focused on the comedy and the plot is definitely just a vehicle for it. And so that's a good and a bad thing at the same time because since this movie is more catered to the comedy and every scene is made so that comedy can be presented, there's a lot more jokes and the jokes are debatably even funnier. But because of that, the plot does feel a little bit hollow and pointless. It's obviously just there so Ace Ventura can go from A, B to C and do comedy routine 1, 2, and 3. The plot is there, but you don't really care why Ace Ventura is stuck in the rhino, you just want to see him crawl out. The plot is almost like a bunch of SNL or In Living Color sketches just tied together. It's not really that important, it's just a vehicle for the comedy. I will admit, the comedy in the first one wasn't that highbrow, but it was intelligent and it was well written. The comedy in this one is definitely a little bit more juvenile. But that doesn't mean that it's not well written, because the comedy in this movie is extremely quotable and extremely memorable still. But I do think it's safe to say that this movie was definitely leaning into the younger audiences with this movie. Adults can still enjoy it. I'm an adult and I enjoy it, but I definitely feel like it was aimed just a little bit more at the kids. It's not necessarily a bad thing, but it's about your preferences. What do you want in a movie? Do you want your movie to create a believable world with just one crazy character in it that's funny? Or do you want just a crazy world where every character is over the top and weird? Because that's the difference between these two movies. And I enjoy both for sure. I just personally prefer the first one. Not because it's funnier, it's actually probably not as funny, but it's a better made movie if that makes sense. So this one's funnier, but just not as well made. And honestly, that makes a lot of sense because there was a ton of drama going on behind the scenes. In fact, this movie's the reason that Jim Carrey swore off making sequels for nearly 2 decades. This movie came out in 1995. He didn't make another sequel until Dumb and Dumber 2, which came out in 2014. And the reason he did that was because he had such a bad experience making this movie, he never wanted to do anything like that again. So the first problem is that Tom Shadyac wrote and directed the first Ace Ventura, but didn't return for the sequel. Originally, he was replaced by Tom DeSergio, but he and Jim Carrey did not get along at all. In fact, it was so bad that after production began, Jim Carrey stayed in his trailer and refused to come out until the director actually quit. From there, they brought in Steve Oedekerk, who wrote the movie, to direct it. Steve Oedekerk did not have much experience directing, but at least he knew the script and got along with Jim Carrey okay. That being said, Jim Carrey's reportedly not even a big fan of the movie after all. Even though they were able to work together to make it better, he still wasn't a fan of the end result. He thought that they cheapened the character and made it a little bit too childish and just wasn't a fan of the writing. So that's why it took him so long to make another sequel. And after Dumb and Dumber 2, he's probably done for good. So Ace Ventura When Nature Calls is okay. It's pretty good, I enjoy it. But it does fall for some of the classic sequel-itis things. There's 2 major pitfalls that can happen while trying to make a sequel. You can make it exactly like the first one, same plot and everything, and it's just boring and pointless. Or you can just bring back the main characters without any real plot or anything in particular to do. When this occurs, the characters often no longer feel like themselves. They feel like caricatures of themselves where they take the personalities and ramp it up to 11. The creators of the film often ramp up these characters because either there's no plot to be spoken of, so it's all about the characters, or you're trying to make it bigger and better than the first one in every way. And so these characters get blown out of proportion and they don't feel like real people or characters anymore, they're just overblown caricatures of themselves. Ace Ventura was certainly a weird character in Pet Detective, but he's definitely a weirder character in When Nature Calls. So the movie's fun, it's goofy, it's got several quotable and hilarious moments, but at the end of the day, it's just not as well written or as high quality as the first one, so it really depends what do you want in your comedy, because the chances are you're gonna laugh more at the sequel because there's just more jokes per minute and it goes above and beyond and even crazier and zanier than the first one. But in my opinion, the first one is written better, it's got a better story, the characters are better developed, and the comedy is still great even though there's not quite as much of it. So that's what I had to think of it. Please let me know in the comments below what you guys thought of it. Also, don't forget to like, share, and if you're new here, subscribe. Thanks guys, bye.